Hello, everyone. Warm welcome. Let's give it another half a minute or so for people to join in before we begin. Okay, let's start. Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the first of the two pre-retreat discussion sessions of the Education Sector Group. The Education Sector Group of ADB has a retreat with all its members once a year. And this year, we've opened up the pre-retreat discussion sessions to interested external participants as well. So we welcome all of you who've joined us today. The two topics that we will cover today have far-reaching implications on education and training. The first is digital skills and jobs and EdTech. And the second is about green transformations and climate change. So in this first session, we will hear experts speak on the role and potential for digital and fourth industrial revolution skills and jobs and how EdTech can be scaled up. We've now come to a place where people are no longer asking if we need to invest in digital skills. It's now about how we can do it. What's the spectrum of digital skills that are needed and how to make them accessible, affordable, and equitable. So the fears of automation and job losses have given to more constructive discourses on what kind of investments are needed in education skills and training to face the digital future. ADB has undertaken several studies on the implications of the fourth industrial revolution, and ADB's COVID response also includes a number of digital solutions in our projects and programs. We believe that human capital development and skills are at the heart of harnessing the power of technology for development results, and that technology can really reshape education delivery in a positive direction and speed up reforms that have perhaps not been so easy to do in the past. So we're looking at technology not for technology's sake, but how it can deliver results and impact in education, kind of indicators and education development in our partner countries. In fact, there is already discussion around how education delivery can be speeded up in a positive direction. And there is emerging discussion around the fifth industrial revolution. Industry 5.0 seeks to foster a more balanced relationship between advanced digital technologies and humans. In Industry 5.0, for instance, humans are not competing with robots for jobs, as we feared in Industry 4.0. Rather, people in the workforce will collaborate with them. And already there are indications that robots are giving way to cobots or collaborative robots. In this scenario, repetitive and mundane tasks will be taken up by machines, whereby creativity and problem solving and higher order thinking will be the role of humans. So economic forecasting post-COVID is also increasingly showing that digital businesses and practices put in place during COVID will actually continue and possibly even accelerate. For example, whether it's in the sphere of e-commerce, digital marketing, or hyper-customized solutions for the future marketplace. Personalization is going to be a big topic, and personalization and the use of big data is going to be a big topic. And we know about personalization already in education, that if it's done well, it can bring enormous benefits to improving the quality of learning. So personalization, not only in education, but also in many other segments. For instance, I just recently read that smart technologies in cosmetics, for instance, the company L'Oreal has unveiled Perso, the world's first AI-powered device for skincare and cosmetics. So in a handheld mobile device, it uses AI technology to access the sort of features of the user and to provide personalized beauty and skincare blends. In the healthcare industry, it is an extremely important, it's playing an extremely important and valuable part in incorporating technologies that can provide personalized care to patients. For instance, Covi, sort of a bionic prosthetics company, is looking to expand a range of customizable 3D printed artificial limbs. Healthcare professionals can use the combination of patient records and smart technologies to custom treatments and to individualized artificial organs. So as Industry 5.0 builds on Industry 4.0, develops and builds and develops on 4.0, we can see many more innovations across industries, including in education. So new technologies going forward will not be just about automating or digitizing, but it's about to blending the two. So it's predicted that enterprises that can actually harness the twin forces of technology and human creativity are likely to see greater success. So we have a great panel of experts today from different settings, and it's time to hear from them about their work and expectations in the future. So let me start with inviting Trisha Suresh. Trisha is the public policy manager in LinkedIn. She works with LinkedIn's data scientists and economists to leverage insights from LinkedIn's economic graph to help shape and inform policies on skills development and workforce development. She has built data-driven policy and strategy for governments, corporates, and multilateral organizations. ADB and LinkedIn have a forthcoming co-branded report on state of skills and jobs. Over to you, Trisha.
Thank you, Shanti. Let me just share my screen really quickly. Can you see my screen, Shanti and everybody?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Okay, thank you, Shanti, once again for the warm welcome. And once again, thank you, ADB, for the kind invitation. My name is Trisha. I'm very pleased to be here with you today to share with you some trends that we're seeing on jobs and skills from LinkedIn's data. We've only got a few minutes today, and Shanti has already said that there's a forthcoming joint publication between LinkedIn and ADB that will dive very much deeper into the impact of COVID on digital skills in developing Asian economies. So you have more to chew on in that joint report. But for today, I wanted to share with you some insights. So a bit of context on the insights that we'll be sharing. All data and insights that we're sharing today is based on LinkedIn's economic graph. In short, this is all the data we've got on LinkedIn. So we've got over 800 million members on LinkedIn, 57 million companies, and over 38,000 skills on the platform. In APAC alone, we've got about 200 million members on the platform. So as we met members, as we met companies, jobs, schools, and skills, we have this unique real-time granular view of changes that are happening in the economy, just as they are starting to take hold. So we share these insights with governments, with international organizations to help shed light on the labor market. So we've been looking very much into skills and skills required for jobs and how that's been changing. So what we've noticed recently as we've been digging into our data is that across the 800 million members we've got on our platform, we're seeing that skills needed for a job has changed by about 25% between 2015 and 2021. And if this pace continues, we expect to see skills required for a job change up to 40% by 2025. So what are the new skills that are coming up on the list? During the pandemic, we've seen teams going hybrid. We've seen soft skills becoming ever more critical in any job you're doing. So that's been driving some of the change. We saw skills related to virtual work, on collaboration increase by over 3 times during the early pandemic period between spring of 2020 and 2019. And then we're also seeing disruptive digital skills really surge across all industries, not just technology, but we're seeing demand for disruptive digital skills in fields such as design and energy and mining and finance coming up. So we are seeing a lot of these advanced software and AI tech skills across various industries. But on digital skills more broadly, so not just on disruptive digital skills, we're also seeing that COVID, as we know very well now, COVID has really dramatically accelerated the demand for digital skills across all countries. So this is a graph that we also dig into in the joint report with ADB on the hiring rate for talent with digital skills. So what we're seeing across APAC economies is that compared with January 2020, we see demand for digital skills really doubling and tripling in some countries. In Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia, we've seen demand on, this is hiring for digital skills, so demand for digital skills increased by over 3x. In India, it's 2.5 times increase. In some of the more developed economies like Singapore, US, and Australia, we're seeing demand for digital talent increase by 1.5 to 2%. So across the board and across various countries, we're really seeing a demand for talent with digital skills. And then when we analyze some job transitions, especially job transitions into emerging job clusters that are more tech focused, we see that transitions from non-emerging to emerging roles are actually more common than we would expect. So this has been interesting for some of the analysis that we've done. So there are opportunities for people to pivot into new roles with their existing skills. So really understanding your skills is quite important, and then understanding the skills required for that next transition is important. So we looked at 8 different job clusters of emerging jobs. And what we saw is that more than half of new hires, and this is the brown bit of the graphs there, more than half, so 60% of people, for example, moving into clusters such as product development, such as data and AI, and then cloud computing, come from different job families. So what we're seeing is that people are upskilling for these emerging jobs, and we also see that employers are now more open to hiring for people from different roles, as long as the workers have the right skills. So it's really imperative for us to help with this upskilling challenge we're seeing. But then the gender gap is growing. The gender gap in digital jobs is growing. So we've seen that women's share of hiring relative to men dipped during lockdowns, and we've seen that across a lot of data. But what's even more concerning is that the gender gap that we're seeing in roles that are growing the fastest, so some of these tech roles, we're seeing that there's not been enough progress made in these roles by way of supporting women, women who would like to grow in these roles. So the share of women being hired in cloud computing roles has increased by only 0.2% since 2018. Similarly, the share of women in data and AI and hiring for women in data and AI has actually decreased. So there's really a need for us to ensure the right policies, the right programs to support women in more of these advanced and disruptive tech roles. There's a lot more data I can share today, but we don't have as much time. But thank you again, ADB, for this invitation. And there are a lot more references that we have that we would be happy to share with all participants. So back to you, Shanti.
Thank you, Trisha, for a very packed but very insightful thing that you presented on point and to time. Thank you so much. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Yoo-Yoon Park, who's the founder of DQ Institute. Dr. Park has led work on digital skills and child online safety. She has conceptualized the digital intelligence, or DQ, and framework, which is a global standard for digital literacy, skills, and readiness. She's a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, the chair of the Equals ITU Digital Skills Coalition and TikTok Safety Advisory Council, and she holds many other positions. Welcome, Yoo-Yoon. Please, over to you.
Thank you, Shanti, and thank you for ADB's kind invitation to this event. Next 5 minutes, I will briefly share why we need to actually work together to fast scale of digital skills education around the world and how we can achieve it. Thanks to Trisha, we don't need to talk about why we need a digital skills. I think we all agree that COVID-19 pushed us to fast digitizations, and digital skills are no longer good to have. It is not an optional. It is actually becoming must. But the problem that we all observe is that digital skills gaps are ever fast increasing, and which is worrisome and yielding inequality and other side effect. Why I take the 1 billion digital skills? As you all know, there is UN SDG goal of 4.4 of closing digital skills gap by 2030. But in order to achieve that, I think we need to get to the point of 1 billion within 5 years. with the theory of change, when new innovation get adopted by 50% of population, that it becomes a norm. So if you think about the whole global population, 1 billion is kind of magic number. So how can we make it possible? I think answer is simple. We all know we need to work together. Currently, there are so many digital skills movement education programs around the world. Billions of dollars are invested by public and private sectors. But the problem is that most of the programs are working in silo. We sometimes reinvent the wheels, causing inefficiency, and we use different frameworks and different understanding. So what we need at this moment is about how we can coordinate our efforts, how we can work together, how we can track our effort together so that we can identify true gaps and who make the real impact, and how we can effectively use the resource and distributions, make it possible. So let's start with let's speak the common language. Currently, the definition of digital skills are different to different nations, different industry, and different groups, which is very normal. But given the digital skills are global in nature, it is for us to have a common understanding and definition of digital skills. Digital intelligence IEEE global standards define the digital skills most quite comprehensively, and with this flexible structure of covering 8 different areas of digital life and 3 levels of maturity. Digital skills is now defined as not just about the computational skills or AI skills. It's more broadly the comprehensive skills that actually enable individuals to thrive in this digital life. So what we have done together with IEEE and many other collaborators, define further taxonomy and coordinations to create a common language for digital skills and digital literacy by aggregating all the major digital skills frameworks around the world. What we try to build is that what is a building block for the future readiness for individuals that can lead to individuals' well-being and societal SDG. Yes, there have been extensive research and overarching frameworks for digital skills, but more important question is that, okay, digital skills for whom and for what? I think it is important for us to think about what are the target segments and what digital skills are relevant to that target segments. So we first defined 6 target groups. So first is digital skill for online safety, which is life skill for children. Second, of course, education readiness. Third, work and innovation, as Tricia mentioned. 4, actually inclusive digital skills, which enables the elders and underprivileged community to be part of the digital economy. And of course, we just talked about the gender gap, how we can ensure we have a female empowerment through digital skills. And lastly, all of us, we want to have a well-being, and that requires also skills as well. So now we have common language. We talked about target and topic. Last, most important question is how we can coordinate and track different frameworks, different programs, and different research. I think it is so important for the nations and industry should have their own digital skills and frameworks and program that tailor to your specific needs for the digital transformations. So using the DQ standard as a common language doesn't mean that anybody have to use a DQ framework. What we try to achieve is that DQ frameworks serve as like a Swift code in the banking. We work in the back to coordinate the different programs around the world. So we called it like ABCDE standardization progress. Sorry. So for instance, we developed together with the National University of Singapore, the National Digital Wellbeing Indicator Frameworks for Singapore. So this measures the individual level of digital well-being and their digital skills to achieve it. So what we have done is A, we align with the standard. B, we also look at and benchmark the international program. C, so we could design a program and we developed the new frameworks. But what is more important is that how we can keep track of our impact. So based on the data analytics, we developed the common assessment tools and instruments that can be embedded in any digital skills program. So for instance, in US digital skills wellbeing projects, we will distribute these common measurement tools by embedding and related digital skills program, and it will give two benefits. First, the data can be fed into the DQ index, so we understand about the global benchmarking and develop the index, but at the same time, it can be used to measure the impact of digital skills program. And lastly, E is evaluate the impact, which is what we can collectively achieve by standardizations and coordinations. DQ index is not about just one index, it's more about the collaborative platform to bridge the different research, as I share with you, and the programs around the world. I believe the next speaker will talk about the Digital Education Readiness Index, which I believe that such a huge important work that can be worked together, which is also shown as a third pillar of the DQ index. Our suggestion is that why don't we work together and create the largest data bank and global repository together for the common goods. It will give the freedom to develop the digital skills roadmap and programs specific to each nation's specific needs. But at the same time, it will give us the collective measurement that can track the collective impact and progress of digital skills, so we can achieve 1 billion digital skills together. I believe all of us gathered today because we all believe that digital transformation is about people, not about the technology. So with the common belief, why don't we work together? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yoyon. That is an important closing line and very, very interesting work around standardization, measurements, digital well-being, and you also closed it on the right note that it's about humans and not only about technology. Thank you. Now turn to Andrew Staples. Andrew is the Asia Pacific Director of Economist Impact, the policy and insight arm of the Economist Group, and he leads research and analysis, design thinking solutions, and market-leading media products. Prior to The Economist, Andrew has held several academic positions as well. And currently, Andrew is collaborating with ADB in the development of the EdTech Readiness Index. Over to you, Andrew. Look forward to your intervention.
Thank you very much, Shanti, and I'm delighted to join you today. Hopefully everybody can see the screen okay. Shanti, are we okay?
Not yet.
Okay, let me just try one more time. Here we go.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And so as you heard, I represent the policy and insights team of Economist Impact, and we're delighted to be working with ADB on this digital readiness framework, looking at education in a number of developing countries within this region of Asia. Let me just give you a quick overview, because it's really, really interesting to hear from the previous two speakers, Trisha, Dr. Part there, about the need for skills and how we approach how we assess where we are with the skill sets that we need and what we will be needing in the future. And interesting then to think about how this particular project fits in with this. So I guess some of the genesis and rationale for this project is thinking about the ongoing digital transformation, but then of course the impact of the pandemic over the last nearly 2 years or so. We also want to be thinking about the dual role of digitally delivered education, which again has been given extra sort of prominence during the pandemic. So in terms of insurance, making sure that education can continue in spite of disruptions that might be faced, particularly from climate change, for example, or indeed pandemics, and access to education and bridging that digital divide. And also in terms of thinking about the learner benefits from this, and it's very, very clear from both those two previous presentations that the digital skills that are required by industry, by society, are only going to become more and more important. So how do we make sure that the people going through education are getting access to those skills and training? So all is in way of saying the rationale for this project is to create a data-driven assessment framework developed to assess the strengths and gaps in the national level digital education readiness of countries. And where we see the strengths, this is great best practice that can be replicated elsewhere. Where we see gaps, well, what actions can we be taking to fill those gaps? And let me just bring you on to the framework itself and the policy, the project overview here. So as I say, the goal is to assess the readiness of education delivery using EdTech for member countries within the region. You can see those over on the right. We have 8 that we have just about covered off in the first phase. We've got a further 2 that we're working on there, Indonesia and Vietnam. And we're looking across these subsectors of school education, higher education, technical vocational education, and training. In terms of the framework for the project, we have 55 indicators within this index across 5 key dimensions, and you can see them listed here. So physical and digital infrastructure. So there, for example, we might be talking about connectivity, access to the internet, affordability and quality of those connections. Where we're thinking about national level government policy, we're thinking about, for example, funding initiatives targeted at the development of digital education, of teacher training initiatives and so on. Where we're looking at the readiness of schools and teachers, we're looking at the capacity and capabilities. We're looking at, for example, the evidence or not, existence or not of community support. And again, when we're thinking about students and their partners, their capabilities and the support that they're getting, and finally thinking about the presence of digital education providers within those markets as well. What e-learning systems do they have? What partnerships do they have? What content are they providing, for example? So we put all this together across those bands there, if you like, across those dimensions that we have listed down the left-hand side of this chart here. And then we're thinking about the outcomes of all of that. And we are largely looking to define countries in their journey within this. So initial, emerging, developed, and mature. And so I think if you look into the results of this index, you'll be able to see where individual countries are on those journeys to providing digital education. And it might well be that certain countries are more advanced in some dimensions than in others. But really, the key point of this is to help us understand where we are today, where the strengths are, where the gaps are, and how we could be filling them for the future. So just very briefly, that's what we're looking to do. Just a further note on some of the other research that we do as the Economist Group, and particularly with business leaders, with industries and so on. And this is not covered in these slides here, but what we see very, very clearly over the past year or so in the work that we're doing is the continued focus on digital transformation. Indeed, we're talking about the tech acceleration as the need for a shift to a more digital models become clearer, more apparent as a result of the pandemic as well. Also, in terms of the shift in focus of that, whereas a couple of years ago, a lot of organizations might have been talking about the need for a digital transformation to improve customer experience, for example, or their competitiveness within the market. And you can see that very clearly in places like e-commerce and financial services space, for example. Now there seems to be quite a lot, a sharper focus on digital transformation to realize net zero, for example, another sort of rationale for pushing through the digital transformation. And of course, we've had the whole sort of shake up to the world of work and how we work and the type of work that we do now and how we collaborate, not just within organizations, but across countries and geographies as well. So just to echo some of the thoughts that we see from industry that I think Tricia was picking up from her data from LinkedIn as well. So I'll just come to an end there. Just a very quick overview of the work that we're doing, and we're looking forward very much to releasing all of this next month. I'll be happy to take questions and join the conversation a little bit later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew. That was a very quick spectrum of what you're doing and using that data to also understand how the future is going to shape, whether it's consumer-led interventions or what the demand from the market is going to be, and how to prepare for it in a systematic way. Thank you very much. I'd like to now, the three representatives in this panel are all coming from very data-rich kind of background, and they really look at evidence and putting evidence to work for public policy. So I would like to probe you a little bit more about how we can use that, use data and use insights to inform development policy and practice. So let me start with you, Dr. Yu-Yun Park. You mentioned your goal of digital intelligence for 1 billion citizens by 2030. Clearly, digital capabilities will become essential for all. But can you share a little bit about how you are thinking, about DQ across the spectrum for different kinds of applications and at different levels? And you also mentioned it being the importance of making it people-centered. So how can we also ensure that adequate capacities are built for like women, for people from disadvantaged communities? And as a development institution, we are very interested to see how we can use digital to bridge the gaps. Yu.
Sure. I think what Andrew presented actually gave us a good framework of thinking about what are the dimensions that we want to touch upon when it comes to digital education readiness. He talked about beyond the digital physical infrastructure, we need to think about the government policy and readiness, not just about the teachers, but also the parents, and also what are the providers out there. So each played a role, and also the reason I wanted to have the 6 different segments is about the each different target audience. We need a different actually digital skills to provide. But for each digital skills target audience, we need to have all these 6 dimensions to be actually playing together to provide the digital skills for, together. So first of all, I think it is most important to have overarching the national frameworks for the digital skills that can guarantee for the nations to think about digital skills as not as narrow coding skills or how to create Excel. It's actually, we want to think about the broader, about the what is the, including from safety to well-being to the job readiness to the innovations. What is actually the different dimensions? So that's why we need to have a comprehensive, the national digital framework, skill framework is actually first thing that is absolutely needed. And second part is about the related to the schools is schools readiness is enormously important. I think I really love the Andrew's presentation because I think it's actually give us a hierarchy. Like we all think about the physical frameworks, which is every nation's pay attention. But second, we need to have a national, actually the soft infrastructure. And third is about the teachers' competencies, which has been seriously like not neglected, more about the delay because of COVID and others, which I think is a more enormously important. I know I'm going to take too much time, but I think it is important for us to think about it more holistically rather than just narrow focus.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know an all-encompassing digital framework, but I guess we also need to ensure that it's agile and and it's a living one which kind of keeps updating itself, because what we see is that the marketplace is evolving so very much, and even in the last 2 years, you see a lot of growth and change in the type of digital skills that are being required in the market. Okay, I'd like to turn to Andrew Staples now. Andrew, the Digital Readiness Index and the framework that you've been working with us on, and which is what you talked about. This can again provide policymakers with a very evidence-based and it's a good setting on which they can build their capacities. I mean, assess where they stand and also map the journey of where they would like to go. how can we also measure and track how we can, how these digital capacities are being put to use, and how are they being used, to what end, and how are the benefits being reaped, and is there a way to also understand the development outcomes of such things, and what are your thoughts on applying some of these principles specifically to the education sector and also young populations more specifically? Andrew.
Thank you. A really important point. And I think from our perspective, the practical application of the learning from this type of data-driven analysis that we're doing is absolutely crucial. We want policymakers to understand what they're doing right, what others are doing right, and what the lessons are that they can be learning there. I think a crucial link, though, is that link with employers, the skill sets that they're going to need, or they need today, and they're going to need in increasing urgency as they look to digitize their business models, as the sectors within which they're working increasingly go digital. So that would seem to me to be one of the areas where we can start to track the impact of policy changes, or across those dimensions I was talking about, infrastructure and parent readiness, student readiness, and so on. But linking that with the real world application of the skills that students should be gaining. So I guess from my perspective, just to reinforce that, how do we track through the policy decisions that are being taken by governments in terms of access to digital education, and what that means for the workforce, what that means in terms of economic growth, in terms of attracting in foreign direct investment, and so on, would seem to be a ready way to assess the impact of those policies.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, a number of very concrete ways in which we can move forward. I'd like to turn to Trisha now. The LinkedIn platform is really a dynamic growing, like you've shown the numbers that your platform represents. It's a real-time platform which is so very valuable for policy making. And we all know that the traditional types of labor market surveys and so on take a long time, and then by the time data is available, the trends have already moved on. So how to gauge emerging trends and how to anticipate the market before things actually play out is such an important part of improving readiness to the future. Would you like to share your thoughts on how, you've been working in public policy, you're working with different stakeholders, how can policymakers derive the benefits of such live real-time platforms like LinkedIn? And also many countries are now coming up with their own several online portals. How can they prepare better for future job markets? And what are the promising trends that you think could be amplified?
Thanks, Shanti. I think what we've seen from all the speakers today is the importance of using data to inform policy initiatives and programs. At LinkedIn, obviously, we've got this economic graph, and what we try to do is share these insights with governments. We build up partnerships with governments and international organizations, as I've shared. We're also working with partners to also better understand skills and the skills taxonomy. We talked about digital skills more broadly, as Unit suggested, I had talked about, but we're also looking at this 38,000 skills that we've got on LinkedIn. How do we map it? How can we all speak the same skills language? And then more broadly, how can we then work more collaboratively is the other thread that I've heard from our panelists today. How can we work more collaboratively with governments, with employers, with workers themselves to build a skills-based economy? Because we have jobs that are coming up, with skills that are coming up, and how can we upskill? How can we work together towards this upskilling challenge? In Singapore, quite recently, we worked with the Singapore government to pilot a new LinkedIn product called Skills Path, where we are helping employers use LinkedIn to identify skills that individuals have. So individuals, as they are applying for a job now, they would have to complete a skills assessment to show that they have certain skills. And so employers can then look at a candidate based or assess a candidate based on their skills as opposed to traditional qualifications in schools they've gone to. And that again helps with this building a broader ecosystem of all of us coming together to push towards the skills first lens of hiring and building a skills based economy. So there's a lot of work there, but it's definitely a collaborative effort.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wonder if you, all the three speakers would like to share just one thought on what do you think is a really difficult constraint that we must overcome to reap this digital dividend for all in the future, whether it's in terms of skills for jobs or whether in terms of greater benefits from the application of digital skills or improved productivity and so on. And what is the sort of one investment that must be done today in order not to miss the wave of benefits that so that developing countries can also, so any like a very quick one sentence, Andrew?
Well, maybe if I could just again draw on the learnings from some of the work that we've done with corporates around digital transformation. And the biggest challenge that business leaders report to us is mindset within the organization, mindset around change, mindset around arguing for the investment in digital technologies and capabilities and so on. I'm minded of some of the reports that we saw coming out of developed economies during the pandemic. I'm thinking about Japan, for example, where the level of digitization in the classroom is very, very low compared to some other societies. In the UK, where it exposed inequality in terms of access to laptops to be able to engage in digital education and so on. So this is a pervasive issue. So I would say mindset. And getting people invested, making the case for it. It's not a nice to have. It's not people just spending time on Google or gamification. Right. It's crucial skills, as Trisha was pointing out, to build a skills-based economy in society.
Right. Thank you, Trisha. Very quick.
I think at LinkedIn we're quite optimistic about the future. From the data we've seen that there are jobs and there are skills that are needed, but a lot of these emerging job classes that we've seen, you can top up those skills and you can then transition and pivot into those jobs. I think building on Andrew's point on mindset, we've seen that making that shift from an employer's perspective of hiring based on somebody's skills as opposed to traditional experience and qualifications has been quite challenging. But having that government push has really helped. So in Singapore, for example, when we built out that partnership with the Singapore government to push employers to hire based on skills, it really helped having the government support as opposed to LinkedIn just developing or any private provider sort of developing a new product to hire based on skills. I think that has been really helpful, and changing mindsets of employers is definitely a challenge, but we can do it again collaboratively.
Thank you, Trisha. Yuyun.
Since Andrew and Trisha already gave the right answer, I will give a wrong answer actually. No, it is not from the data or anything. Actually, one quote that I learned from my old partner in Nepal and Nigeria. And they actually brought the digital skills education for children who do not even have the device at school, who do not have connectivity. And then I asked them, they don't even have connectivity, why are you rushing? And he said, it was the one quote I always remember. It is not about the technology, it is actually the vision that I have in mind for our children. So digital skill is a way that can enable these children to be flock and compete against the children in Silicon Valley. So I think having the vision from the bottom up was something I always remember, that they will be the game changer. So I think technology can brought us into, even though it seems like it's ever increasing the inequality, I wish that we work together to brought the digital skills to enable the most underprivileged today becomes the most privileged tomorrow. So I think that's one, not take away, more of a wish to the audience.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, very, very interesting and valuable insights. Thank you. I'd like to move on now to the next segment. You've shared a lot of interesting possibilities of what should be done. And here we have a team of education specialists from within ADB who've been working on these topics and work on real projects on the ground. So it's now time to listen to them. Let me start with Fu King Chong. He's in the Southeast Asia Department of ADB. I would like to request him to now share briefly on the kind of new interventions and approaches that are being embedded in projects and programs in the region. And you've been a great champion of 4IR. You've developed this series relating to the fourth industrial revolution. Over to you, Chong.
Thank you so much, Shanti, and a very good afternoon to all, and congratulations to the speaker for sharing their excellent work on digitalization. Shanti mentioned earlier about Industry 4.0 and even Industry 5.0 at the very beginning of the session. And since I have very little time for this session, I will share the work on Southeast Asia region on Industry 4.0 from an ADB operation perspective. Our region commissioned a study led by Shanti and Samir on Industry 4.0 in 2020 in 4 countries, namely Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia, and the Philippines. The study looks at the impact of Industry 4.0 on selected 2 sectors in each country. For example, the sector in the study in Indonesia were on the food and beverage manufacturing and automotive. For Vietnam, these were in logistic and agro processing. In Cambodia, tourism and garment. And in the Philippines, IT, BPO, and electronics. So arising from the study, 1 synthesized report and 4 country reports were produced and published last year. And for those who are interested, you can easily download this report from ADB website. The study was useful in shaping Industry 4.0 support to the respective country that we are working in Southeast Asia. For example, the new Philippine TVET project supporting innovation in Philippine TVET, SIP TVET in short, draws heavily on the study finding in building the justification and designing the technical scope for the project. The SIP TVET project will be developing well-informed new training curriculum on Industry 4.0 and support innovation in adapting or adopting Industry 4.0 technology through applied R&D with SME in the Philippines. And in Cambodia, an industry transformation map, in short ITM, for the textile and apparel sector was developed, and that was done last year. So developing ITM was actually one of the key recommendations from the Industry 4.0 study report. So we intend to develop another 1 more ITM for Cambodia and also support the government in further ITM development in the future. Another initiative on Industry 4.0 is the partnership with Singapore Polytechnic under the Global Technology Innovation Village platform, where 4 workshops funded by Temasek Foundation on Industry 4.0 technology and solution were organized last year, 2021, with lead technology companies, participation companies such as Siemens, Bosch Rexroth, Huawei, SICK, ASTM, and many more experts from this company shared about their Industry 4.0 solution and application for a real-world application. The workshop were well attended by participants from countries such as the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, and also from India and Bangladesh. So it was not only limited to the Southeast Asian countries. Another 3 more sessions will be organized this year. So we hope to see more participation from the developing member countries. Last but not least, on Industry 4.0, we also established a partnership with World Economic Forum to jointly promote the Global Smart Industry Readiness Index, in short, a global series among ADB developing member countries. SIRI is an assessment framework that actually look into 3 building blocks, namely process, technology, and organization in a company, and also look at 8 pillars, including connectivity, talent readiness, automation, and technology readiness. and as well as a 16th dimension of the organization. And Siri objectively look into the extent an organization is implementing and deploying Industry 4.0 technology, and how initiative can be put in place to help the company to transform, in terms of the application of technology for productivity and quality. So Philippine DTI, Department of Trade and Industry, took up the initiative to assess 20 companies under the global Siri last year. So we welcome other countries to also actively look into the use of a global Siri, because from the operation perspective, if we are able to collect sufficient data from companies on their implementation of technology, then we can better design programs at the TVET level to support the transformation of a country in terms of Industry 4.0. In addition to this Industry 4.0, I also quickly mentioned about the education technology front. In fact, we have quite a few initiatives. We supported the International Institute of Cyber Education on piloting digital credentialing using blockchain technology that was led by Linet, and also a study on four Southeast Asian country practices and implementation on education technology. This was led by Samir. Work is ongoing. So I'm sure if Linet and Samir, if they are available, they'll be more than happy to share if time permit. I think my 3 minutes is up. Shanti, over back to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chong. Thanks. Very concrete examples of how we are putting things on the ground, both in terms of capacity development, but also helping to change the delivery of digital skills. Thank you. I turn to Gisun Song from South Asia. South Asia has a very large ADB program in education and skills. And invite you, Gisun, to share your thoughts on how the South Asia region's ADB portfolio is incorporating EdTech and digital skills that helps to prepare youth for the future. Over to you, Gisun.
Thank you very much, Santi. Certainly, South Asia is a large country, and then still like a large proportion of the population is actually struggling with the traditional education as well. And then this diversity inequality, some of the earlier panelists mentioned, is actually exacerbating quickly as more and more emphasis actually putting on the educated, skilled persons in terms of productivity and wage as well. So the South Asia overall is being faced by the inequalities in the education itself, as well as the with this like emerging new technology, digital divide is like ever more prominent. And then on top of that, this COVID pandemic has exacerbated a lot of aspects of this. But this also comes as to a certain extent, when the government is actually taking this opportunity to provide more disruptive solutions to actually overcome the challenge of the pandemic and then the long duration of school closure and so on, this actually came as an opportunity. And then the ADB has been as a long partner in their endeavor to improve the education sector. Actually, we could incorporate some of this in a larger scale, both EdTech and digital skills. Digital skills or the EdTech actually serves as a means to achieve better education quality and access, but also like developing the foundational skills for the students to become so-called digital citizens as well. So the blended learning for school education actually has been incorporated in a large scale in Sri Lanka education, secondary education program, as well as the new program in 5 states in India. And then these actually incorporating blended learning opportunities, addressing some of the components actually Andy mentioned, as well as a key component of offering those EdTech. And then in addition to that, as a stopgap measures to overcome the challenge of COVID, Nepal actually introduced the online learning portal, which is actually great potential to be continued and further developed even after the pandemic. And then Bangladesh also introduced a digital platform for the teacher training for the primary education. And they're also introducing digital textbooks for the secondary education and then training of the teachers. In Bhutan, blended like a mentoring and actually tutoring to bridge between the offline and online opportunities for children and students, both in STEM and in TVET. And then TVET and higher education, through this like a pandemic situation, even as a component actually originally incorporated, but we could actually strongly push for the more of blended learning as an alternative ways to learn, especially with new technology areas such as IR4 and digital new emerging digital technologies, and where online programs are already available, and rather than the partner agencies actually insisting developing them themselves, but like relying more on digital platforms such as edX, Udemy, Skillshare, LabTech Academy, or Amazon, and also like partners like Korea Tech and ITE Singapore to tap on their established mechanisms and so on to quickly adapt and adopt this blended learning. These are still in pilot stage or in a kind of partial way, but we hope like these lessons during the pandemic actually can provide the strong impetus for us and the partner government to adopt this more in a larger scale and then continue this effort beyond the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gisun. I think also you highlighted the importance of partnerships in advancing the agenda for digital skills. Thank you. I'd like to now turn to Esuki Tajima from the Central West Asia region. Esuki has also been co-leading this work on the study on 4IR for 3 countries in the region. Over to you, Esuki.
Thank you very much, Shante. It's amazing we have still 135 participants at this meeting. I'm very excited. So let me briefly explain some initial findings of our Industry 4.0 study. Following the successful study in ASEAN countries, CWLD's team has been working with Shanti's team to conduct this study in Pakistan, in Punjab in Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and also Azerbaijan. So let me briefly explain about 5 key findings. Firstly, our main question is what kind of skills to be needed in the 5 years' time with the introduction of the 4IR. Today's session, 3 external participants really highlighted digital skills. And yes, digital skills is very important, but this doesn't come as the top skills in our study. The skills to be needed will be creative thinking, adaptive learning. And in addition to digital skills, problem solving and observation skills are very, very important for the industries to employ the new young people in the 5 years' time. So our study focuses on TVET schools, but I think these skills, especially creative thinking, adaptive learning skills, observation skills, it should come from the much lower level. And as you may recall, President Obama launched this STEM education in the US, and then actually they are starting from the primary schools. So in CWLD, we are discussing how this can be happening in our countries like Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and also Tajikistan in the future. And second key findings, training institutes really need good help, how they can really introduce the 4IR to be taught at their schools. It's not only the curriculum development, teacher training, and also the applicable, practical approach for teaching the 4IR in the classroom. They really need a good support. Third findings is that, I think all our TVET projects in ADB is facilitating, but the industry school linkages is very, very weak. among these countries, surprisingly, Pakistan has got a much better, linkage with the industry and schools. And then through our project, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, we try to, strengthen this linkage. And then fourthly, the policies. Ms. Park also mentioned about this national framework, the needs of national framework in the countries, but our also study findings is that there's no links or very weak links between technology adoption and skills development. Very interestingly, in Azerbaijan, we have a government agency focusing on 4IR. However, there's no really big roadmap for the implementation. And then also line ministry needs great support, how to mainstream the 4IR in the skills development and also education training. And the last point, I really want to echo Ms. Trisha's, really highlighting on the gender aspects. At this moment, more male will be benefiting from 4IR. So our project really need to focus on and also supporting the girls and also young women who are already working in the labor market. So these are the 5 points I want to really mention at this meeting.
Yeah,
over to you, Shanti.
Thank you very much, SK. That is to the point, and you also highlighted and the reaffirmation of what Chong has said about transformation maps and so on. Thank you very much. In very tangible ways in which we can help to address digital skills challenge. Before I turn to Jeffrey, who is the last speaker on the EDB team, from the participants, if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A function. I see that there are already a few questions. So please, after this, after Jeffrey, we will open it up for Q&A. So if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the Q&A function. So Jeffrey, over to you. Last, definitely, but not least, you've been collaborating with Andy on the digital, so on the EdTech Readiness Index, and also you're a technology specialist, education technology specialist. Over to you.
Thank you, Santi, for the introduction. It's really great to be in this session, listening to all our panelists and discussing, sharing their thoughts. We all know COVID has reinforced the importance of digitalization, especially as what we're seeing in the education and training sector. But countries are largely still struggling with the learning loss from COVID and also scaling up quality education post-COVID, which really demanding more support from us, ADB, for their digital transformation. So our developing member countries, I think that we based on the study, really needs differentiated strategies towards the digital transformation roadmap based on their individual countries' situation, which we're using the digital education readiness framework to assess in a more comprehensive manner from the 19 subdomains and 55 indicators. We have also evolved much further from taking the best practices and lesson learned globally from using EdTech platforms to accelerate the digital transformation process with the more focus on evidence-based and data-driven decision-making. So we in the education sector group are looking forward to really continuing to work with various partners, of course, including and beyond the 3 organizations, partners we invited today, EIU, LinkedIn, and the DQ Institute, to really harvest and standardize these EdTech standards and practices for use and reference with our AV DMCs, which includes the DERF, the toolkit for assessing digital skills for teachers and the various programs to build up the digital capacity for teachers and the whole education ecosystem. I'll stop here. Back to you, Santi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for that very concise presentation of what we are up to and how we can use it. Thank you very much. There are some questions in the Q&A, so let me start with those. The first one is from Mark, and it's about how we can help developing countries in terms of moving towards a more mature digital skills and digital and skills intelligence framework, and how the whole infrastructure challenge can be tackled. I wonder if Yuyun would like to answer this as a starter. addressing the challenge of infrastructure in building digital intelligence, and also how to move developing countries towards more mature digital economies?
Sure. I think, a lot of times the technology infrastructures goes very fast, but at the same time, the education soft infrastructures go slow. And it is very important for the countries when they think about the universal access, internet access, and technology and innovation. They have to think together with the digital skills roadmap. As the previous, actually, the panelists spoke, there's a huge gap between what government is doing and actual transformations is happening underground. So, which actually tells us that there's no coordination within the countries, right? So it is so important that private sectors and public sectors work together and see the importance of hard and soft infrastructure go together. A lot of time, hard infrastructure, there's a lot of integrations between and seamless collaboration between the private and public sectors. But unfortunately, in education and policy sectors, there's a disparity. How can we fill the gap? How can we ensure that EdTechs go together with the policy? How can we ensure that like LinkedIn-like companies work together with the government to give the right informations based on the data? I think that is a big challenge, and that's something that has to achieve together. Soft, hard together, number one. Number two, how to coordinate within the nations. Yep.
Thank you. Practical advice. The second question is around costs and affordability of IT platforms and IT equipment and products that are increasing in terms of price and affordability. And the question is about ADB guidelines or protocols. So, of course, as a development institution, we are very interested in equity and accessibility. We do not have we do not have a formal guideline on this, but we are definitely looking at how we can increase access to all segments of population. All our projects anyway address the vulnerable and the disadvantaged. I wonder if Gisun if you'd like to speak to this topic of how to make affordable access to EdTech and IT products and services in our member countries through our projects.
Thanks. Thanks. Certainly, like hardware and the connectivity is a big question, and then it has been always the challenges we first face. Like whenever we kind of discuss about this, online learning and introducing more blended learning and so on. And as we see, there are a lot of technological options, and then during this pandemic, we have seen many countries also adopting so-called a low tech, simply education TV or even a printed materials. But what is most important is how actually make it accessible to all, and the educators actually have a capacity to facilitate the learning rather than just dumping the device or the materials to the students.
Yeah.
However, there are a lot of efforts also being made with the telco operators to make the access by students actually a cheaper or free, and also device-wise as well. But I think there should be a lot more work need to be done. But we shouldn't underestimate the advantages or the possibilities, or also leveraging all the technology. Over.
Thank you. Yeah, the covering the spectrum and not closing any options. I think Chong, your hand is up. I know you working in projects and also very good, well placed to answer this. John.
Thanks, Shanti. I sort of just wanted to add, on this discussion about, training equipment, right? About 2020, we started the Assam Skill Development, Assam Skill University project processing. At that time I was still with South Asia division, and we took a little bit of budget, from the processing to develop or sort of pilot a few curriculum learning content using mixed reality. Basically, we develop content using Unity programming and Microsoft HoloLens 2 to develop digital content, for training of automotive technology for aircon servicing and repair. So in fact, these content were developed and they were very powerful, meaning, you don't need the physical equipment, and you can digitally upgrade, the equipment anytime, there's changes in the industry, and you do not need to use training consumables because they are all training digital training consumables. So the reason why we sort of did that, was we understand that, in many TVET institutions, sometimes there are still, issues with budget to procure training consumables, or because of equipment upgrade, equipment get outdated. So the students are not being able to get the real practical training. So using mixed reality training, in a way, you have the digital embedded with the physical environment. What it means that we actually can port this learning content, in every institution. And if bandwidth, internet bandwidth is a problem, we also can do a local, server version. So fast forward, now that I'm in the Southeast Asia department, and we managed to secure this high-level technology fund in ADB to do a pilot in the SIP TVET project in the Philippines. So hopefully, by end of the year or early next year, we are able to set up the lab with the hardware and develop, in addition to the 4 learning content that we have, we can, sort of replicate that. So on another angle, not so much about, this mixed reality, is that, we talk so much about Industry 4.0, but in reality, the small, medium enterprises are also struggling, with the technology transformation, and it's so much easy to just tell the small, medium enterprises, just borrow money from the bank, and then you can upgrade all your equipment, but that's not going to happen because, these are expensive. So the approach is a step-by-step transformation, to the small, medium enterprises, which is, look at your existing equipment, and machinery that you are using, for production, for operation, could you sort of upgrade them by connecting equipments to equipment, and if you're able to do that, what kind of data, can we collect? What kind of sensor can we install in the equipment and machinery? So if we are able to do these 2 steps, it means that, we are effectively practicing, the use of Industry 4.0 technology, and there are hosts of a solution and technology available, in the market already. So what it means is that then, we need to train our students, not immediately to operate, high-tech Industry 4.0 equipment, but, how do our students be able to come out of the institution and be able to help company to upgrade and transform step by step, starting with the connectivity as well as the installation of sensor and platform, IoT platform, for data collection and so on and so forth. So I stop here. Yeah, over back to you,
thank you.
Shanti.
There's a question for LinkedIn. The question is that how representative it is of micro entrepreneurs, informal workers, and so on. And I know that digitalization is gathering pace, and even such enterprises are probably getting onto this type of platform. So, but what is your experience? What is it saying about the growth of such segments in your platform, and more generally, how they can access such tools?
Yeah, thanks, Shanti, and thanks for the question. So LinkedIn's 800 million member base, it's largely professionals. So LinkedIn's vision is to connect every member of the global workforce create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. So that's our vision. Our mission, though, is to connect the world's professionals and help them be more productive and successful. So in the shorter term, or rather in the short to medium term, we're very much more focused on professionals. That said, there's an opportunity to support, as you said, micro entrepreneurs, workers in the informal economy. It's just that the product is not ready in many markets. But we are doing what we can to also find ways to support a broader audience and really ensure that every member of the global workforce has that opportunity. We recently launched LinkedIn in Hindi in India, and that was something that we hadn't launched a new local language product in a while. And we've got about 18 million members now in India. Now we're still we're better penetrated in some of the professional spaces. So we have good penetration rate of workers working in the finance industry, the tech industry. But we're hoping with developing the product in a local language, for example, we will see more individuals working in a wider variety of industries, and the broader labor market find value in connecting and building a network on LinkedIn.
Right. Thank you, Trisha. Yuyun, your hand is up. Would you like to share something?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I think one thing I wanted to see if ADB is willing to step up is about it is very important for the so-called, I don't like the word developing countries, but to build the digital skills roadmap and frameworks in a fast and furious way. And there are already like vast amount of knowledge on the framework side as well as the content part. It's more about how we can share the best practice and knowledge with in tailored way to the country that is actually needing those informations. And I think that middle person's role is enormously important. And I hope that the ADB can play the role and is playing the role. And another question that I saw from the question list, I found it quite interesting about the, do we want to have a local ad tech or do we want to adopt the global ad tech directly? And that is a question that I want to ask to the panelists and audience, because I think there's a benefit that bringing the knowledge from the best practice and global ad tech. But at the same time, it is important to grow the local knowledge, and ad tech, the essence is the data, and we don't want the data to go abroad. So it is important to nurture this ad tech industry within the nations. And what is actually planned for the ADB, and how do you see this problem from the ADB side? It's my question to the ADB.
Thank you. So there was also something on MOOCs. I think I missed that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is somebody, Gisun, would you also want to speak to the Bhutan question on whether to develop something indigenous or to adopt?
I think technology itself is actually nowadays available. The use of like existing technology and adopting it and adapting it, and then actually have the capacity to manage choose and adopt and adapt and manage those technology, and kind of adding on the requirement of the country is, I feel like that is much more important capacity rather than having the actual like a technical solutions. Actually, country like Bhutan, the talent is extremely limited, and most probably like it's also like a we may have to kind of rely on the external resources again, but like while like EdTech itself is really changing quickly as well, and therefore like spending too much time on the developing the localized technology itself, like I feel that is not really, how do you say, time effective, because by the time they're developing something, then it may kind of new technology may become available. But I think like it is best to actually gain the capacity to assess existing or available technology and try to get the best out of it is like a first step. And then of course, like some of the important aspects of like the data of like a student learning, or how like educators actually kind of like providing those more customized learning experience and opportunities, and then identifying the student specific or the local education specific solutions and so on. Yeah, those are certainly most important intellectual properties, and then needs to be leveraged. And I think those like a more higher level of digital utilization skills are among the educators and policymakers. I feel that's more important rather than having the capacity of kind of designing new apps and things like that. Over.
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, I think there's also a rising trend of technology as a service, where a client can kind of opt to buy the technology as a service rather than invest full scale onto developing the hardware and the applications, and to manage and maintain and upgrade them. So they can, go to a vendor and buy the technology as a service, and that can also be customizable to the specific needs. So that's also a growing trend that also then enables the clients not to have problems of legacy infrastructure. What do you do with it? It's high cost to invest in hardware, and what happens when it goes out of fashion or out of use, or a new domain comes in. So the technology as a service option helps to do away with legacy infrastructure. There's a question on whether MOOCs can help to make education more equitable. I think all trends indicate that online education and in general, and MOOCs in particular, can really help to democratize access to higher education in leaps and bounds compared to the options earlier. And I think thanks to COVID, and I think all brick and mortar institutions are also revisiting their business models in terms of fees and in terms of the offerings that they have. I wonder, Jeffrey, would you like to speak to this topic a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Shanti. Yeah, I think some of the relevant questions. I think our position is called localize. So there's really no need to reinvent the wheel on a lot of the MOOCs and the academies, and reinvent those good contents, the Moodles, the platforms that's already being proven, and gained a lot of experience and community best practice in there. But really, there's a need to localize into local language, local context for those MOOCs, and so that can benefit better the local people and the students and learners in the country. So I think that's where the balance you're going to draw between reinventing real versus localizing and what we call the local approach for this. And of course, we're looking forward to getting more practices, better products and contents available to the DMC, so that minimize the efforts that they have to do in the localization or customization part. So I would stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think we've run out of time. I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Trisha, Andrew, and Yuyun for joining us today and for sharing insights from your work. And we hope that we can keep this conversation going. And we look forward to deepening our collaborations and our conversations. I'd like to thank all my colleagues in ADB for sharing what's going on in their respective regions and their projects. Thank you so much for joining today, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.